that matter across the Commonwealth. This is the Fast Lane with Ed Lane.
We could do one of these. It's National Insert Your Day or Week or Month here. Plenty. In fact, it's Black History Month in February, which is awesome. But a little known day today, February 5th, is National Girls and Women's in Sports Day. Now, it doesn't take a brain surgeon to figure this out, although my voice is high enough pitch, maybe you would debate this. But it's two dudes speaking here in the Fast Lane.
I thought you were going to say my hair is long enough.
Well, that's true too, Trey. You can check that out at Fast Lane, Ed Lane, and VTR in Sports on YouTube and Facebook Live. But today is National Girls and Women's in Sports Day. And if you've listened to the Fast Lane long enough, we don't try to shove, where it doesn't fit content in. But we are okay recognizing that women have a place in sports, that women have a place in the sports talk discussion, whether it's their insight and opinions or whether it's discussing women's sports when it's appropriate. Sometimes, like this week, there's not a lot of it because, for the most part, it's Super Bowl 59, which you can hear 2 p.m. VTR in Sports after, oddly enough, Virginia Tech at Virginia in women's basketball. We are going to be adding some Lady Hokie basketball here in the Fast Lane. But also, the other thing is, it's got to fit in with the show organically. But one thing that's always driven me nuts about the world of sports in general, and look, to the credit of sports media, we have evolved quite a bit. And that is, back in the day, it was the good old boys club. And even more so, it was the good old white boys club. And again, I don't think you need to just check boxes by bringing unqualified candidates that are out there. And there have been examples in media, there have been examples in sports in general, where there's a candidate, but the qualifications are debatable. But there are a lot of opportunities where people began the right way, it's grown the right way, they've improved themselves correctly, and they've earned their stripes. And that's one of the cool things about National Girls and Women's in Sports Day is the opportunity to have a start, to grow the right way by your accomplishments, and to let them speak for itself. And we don't usually address this in the Fast Lane because, frankly, first of all, I think we're about just bringing you good content. And if it's females talking, if it's female sports, if it's males talking or male sports, I mean, that's not our focus is any kind of political agenda or ulterior agenda. But it's worth mentioning a day like today just because there's a level of significance to it. And for every guy out there where sports is supposed to be the good old boys club, there are a lot of guys out there who have wives that are maybe interested in sports, have daughters that they would want to be interested in sports, whether that's playing or watching it. And it's a chance to celebrate that. And again, sports is kind of the great equalizer to a certain extent. I'm not going to pretend that a bunch of women are going to all of a sudden be physically able to handle the rigors of the NFL. Like, there's still some anatomical challenges that exist. But I think women's tennis is as exciting as men's tennis, if not more so. I love the best 2 out of 3, even in Grand Slams for women's, where in men's tennis, heck, look at the finals the last year and change. They really haven't been all that exciting in Grand Slam finals. And granted, part of it's because 2 of the best men's tennis players are Jannik Sinner and Carlos Alcaraz. But part of it is also just because you have the ability for the cream to rise in best 3 out of 5. And, if you lose the first set, maybe you lose the second and it just slips away. Versus in women's tennis, there's such an intensity factor because of best 2 out of 3. But then we've seen it in other sports. I get women's basketball this year is not what it was before with Caitlin Clark not being in the women's college basketball landscape. But what's cool about that is you've at least seen a greater level of recognition.
But they still have bigger stars now because of Juju, Paige Beckers. Like, they still have, I think, stars that we haven't seen in quite some time.
Oh, yeah. And Caitlin Clark has helped elevate that because of her presence, but it's the carryover effect. Golf's an example. And again, the good old boys club may brush back on this, but my example with golf is golf in its heyday in interest and viewership was when Tiger Woods was there. And when he left, it wasn't what it was at the peak of Tiger Woods, but it's better than it was for the majority of time before Tiger Woods in the interest in the sport. And granted, now sports betting has played a role in that, but also there's so many great golfers that are out there because of Tiger Woods, much like there are a lot of women's basketball players who are out there and have been inspired by Caitlin Clark. And that's the reason why it's worth celebrating is the breakthrough on that, the fact that we've got people of all different walks in life. And I am pro diversity of thought and opinion and bringing diverse intelligence to the discussion. And that's one of the real things that is worth celebrating is, whether it's Black History Month, we're in that in February. It's National Girls and Women's in Sports Day as well. And we're honoring that today in the Fast Lane. It's the fact that it's less about, what is it? I'm going to butcher it, but the color of your skin, the gender you may represent, whatever it is. And it's more about just, you've got diverse opinions and diverse thoughts, and it makes people more educated and frankly brings more thought-provoking insight into the world of sports. And that's one of the many cool things about National Girls and Women's in Sports Day, not to mention the fact that my wife is a field hockey coach. Her stepdaughter played field hockey, so sports have played a role in our life personally. And sports have also played a role in the fact that those, again, can be examples that other girls can relate to become wonderful, productive, contributing members of our society, much like men have had that privilege as well. And that's one of the cool things. We don't talk about it often, but we are today in the Fast Lane and have a real good show lined up. Travel schedule permitting, we'll talk college basketball, men's and women's, with Debbie Antonelli around 5:25 today here in the Fast Lane. And then around 5:40, friend of ours, Amy Trask from What the Football and CBS Sports NFL analyst, slated to join us. But to start it off today now on National Girls and Women's in Sports Day, someone who does a lot of work with bringing women together in sports media with her Galvanize project, but also
including Virginia Tech graduates. Just have to shout that out.
Thank you, Trey. As a Virginia Tech Hokie, it's of course your place to bring that up. But somebody you'll also be hearing this coming Sunday, 2 p.m. is when we go live on the VTR and Sports app and VTR and Sports, and 5 o'clock is when we go live on our Virginia Talk Radio Network news talk platforms. Laura Oakman with us in the Fast Lane. Laura, thank you for joining us today, and thank you for accommodating our request to connect on National Girls and Women's in Sports Day in what is a very busy time for you, prepping for the Super Bowl and us hearing your voice and your insight this coming Sunday on VTR and Sports.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for asking, and thank you so much for celebrating your sisters. We appreciate all that goodness, and I can't believe in 2025.
Hi, this is Bill Ross.
Having to hear you say the things that were said in 1991 when I was getting into sports. So as much as I appreciate you hearing them, I just kind of sit and shake my head and sigh out loud.
It's awesome. So you mentioned that. All right, what does today in particular, we'll get to NFL in a moment because we're carrying Super Bowl 59 on VTR and Sports 2 p.m. Sunday. But what does today, National Girls and Women's Sports Day in particular, mean for you and a chance to reflect on your journey and also continue making an impact?
I'm going to be really honest. So I'm sitting here at the Super Bowl. I'm looking up right now. I'm sitting on the floor in the middle of Media Row, and I'm looking at this incredible collection of women sitting here. They're, just so talented, so wonderful, so great at what they do, so great at who they are. And what I told them this morning at the mission of Galvanize, my organization for women in sports, we don't post on this day because every day is girls and women in sports. We are not celebrating ourselves today. We're celebrating ourselves every day at who we are and what we do. And so I really don't use this day to reflect on anything except reminding myself that they're still fighting the same battles that I fought 30-something years ago when I got in. So it's kind of where I'm the one that's dousing the water on this, and I hate to do that. But what I would tell you honestly is I'm for celebrating girls and women in sports, girls and women in this life, every single day, not just on one day that we need to take a bow. And we don't really have anything to take a bow for. It should be that we are incredible, diverse voices and opinions in sports, and I don't think that we should be at the point in this world right now where we're discussing if we have value in games or value in our coverage, playing, covering, coaching, whatever it is.
Girls compete, women empower. That's the slogan of Galvanize, which is at Galvanize Life on Twitter and founded by Laura Oakman, who's at Laura Oakman on Twitter. And she's with us right now in the Fast Lane. The evolution from and the role of sports in particular in helping going from girls who compete to women who are empowered and get to empower others. How have you seen just the role of sports in general, whether it's your work as a reporter and a sideline reporter for the NFL on Fox and Westwood One, to those that are playing, competing, and coaching and managing in sports, how that evolution can prepare girls and their evolution from girls to women?
I think, I'm sitting here walking around Media Row, and there's a woman everywhere I look, and that's pretty incredible. I know when I first started, I used to count women at big events because I could, and I started on one hand, and then it was two hands, and now I could never count women because there's so many of us at these big events, which is amazing. But also, if I started counting how many women are in front offices and how many women are hiring women and men, and then we're back to one hand. And so I think organizations like this, I hope what Galvanize does is not just help empower these women to be on camera or to help these women produce broadcasts. I hope all these organizations are helping instill confidence in these women to also go, I want to be a commissioner. I want to be a general manager. I want to be a coach. And since since 30 years, we've seen so many more of these positions actually being filled with women. And I never thought I would look the day to see, a woman doing play-by-play, let alone a woman NFL coach. I would have never thought that I would have seen that. So I think these organizations, including Galvanize, they're just so important to give these women confidence and to give them a group of other women to be supported by, to really keep encouraging each other to keep going on their journey, whatever it looks like in sports. But I think it also gives them some representation, and it also gives them a safe space to go, how are you navigating the gray? Because everything is not black and white in sports for women. It's very much gray. And so I hope what Galvanize does is really help build their confidence to navigate the gray for themselves and also help each other, because I know I would have killed for that when I got into this business.
And it's great insight from Laura Oakman. She has got much of it online as well at Galvanize Life on Twitter, and at Laura Oakman are ways to connect with Laura, who is part of Galvanize, and we're recognizing her today on National Girls and Women's in Sports Day and a special edition of the Fast Lane for that. You will also hear Laura in much greater depth this coming Sunday, 2 p.m. VTRN Sports app, 5 p.m. on our Virginia Talk Radio Network News Talk platforms for Super Bowl 59. You're down there preparing for this broadcast from Westwood One. Laura, the matchup itself, Eagles and Chiefs. Most people think that this has got the potential to be similar to what it was a couple of years ago in terms of being one of the better Super Bowls. Are you getting the sense as well that that's the case, or that this might be one where we're surprised by however it flows?
I hope it's as good as it was 2 years ago. That was such a fun game. I think everyone's using the word rematch, and I know from my conversations this week with the players, with the Eagles and the Chiefs, especially Andy Reid, I know they're being careful not to call it a rematch. And that's really easy when you look at the Eagles, because Saquon Barkley was not in the lineup 2 years ago. That changes everything. And also the coordinators are different. So I think it's a different team, and not just with different personnel and not with different coordinators, but also I had a really nice talk with some players this week who, I'm trying to think, it was AJ Brown, who was like, it was just so different 2 years ago. You wanted to partake in things. You wanted to wrap your arms around the whole experience and be a part of everything. And now realizing it's a business trip. Now realizing I didn't like the way that I did it back then. I wanted to do it differently. And he said that very much translated to the rest of the Eagles. So I think even that gives them a different layer, a different edge. It doesn't mean an edge over the Chiefs, but there's a different edge to them, that we've been here 2 years ago and we want to make sure we don't end it the same way. So it feels different to me. And I know that the Chiefs are being real careful to say that as well, saying we're not expecting the same team we saw, and we certainly can't, because there are enough new parts over there, and including the Chiefs as well.
Of those new parts for Philly, is it the collection on defense? Is it Saquon Barkley at running back? Is it a combination of all that has Kansas City most focused? I wouldn't say worried, because they've been here before, but focused as far as needing to account for?
Saquon and that offensive line. I just think the second that you say to them, and I think I did, what's the one thing you need to do? What's the biggest focus defensively? The first word out of everybody's mouth is Saquon. So they all know that's where it starts. And it was interesting with the Chiefs, because anytime asking them, what's the most important thing you need to do to make sure that you make history, it's also more about being ourselves, our energy. It's not even really about the Eagles. It's more about we need to play our best game. And we know with the Chiefs this year, they haven't done that much. We haven't seen these, the strong season from them. And so I think they very much are are understanding that this is a tough Eagles team, and for them to make history, it needs to be about them, and it needs to be about the energy, is what Andy said. Immediately, we need to have our energy, and we need to make sure that we're playing our best game. And I think stopping Saquon is a huge part of that. Huge part of that.
Laura Oakman with us here in the Fast Lane. Laura, the other part to this is if it's a close game down the stretch, which of course you hope and we hope when we're listening on VTR and Sports this coming Sunday for Super Bowl 59. The advantage many people point to with Kansas City, first of all, is Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. Is there any way to quantify that other than the fact that they've won so many one-score games this year? And oh, by the way, they already have hoisted 3 Lombardi trophies together and are going for number 4 overall and 3 in a row.
You can look at that as half glass full or half empty, right? Like you can go, gosh, they've needed all these close games, and what does that say? And I talked to Matt Nagy about that, and Matt was like, what I would tell you is that it shows how complementary we played. It shows how strong our whole team is. So it hasn't just been Patrick Mahomes. Travis Kelce hasn't had his strongest season. And so what it's shown, what Matt said was it's really shown what a complete team we have right now. And what the Chiefs would say is there's confidence in that and power in that. And I mean, no, how do you talk about this Chiefs team without Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes? And as strong as a Vic Fangio defense is, he has not fared well against Andy Reid or especially Patrick Mahomes. I think he's 0-8 against him. And so, I mean, we can sit and talk about how complimentary the team is and how much they've needed to draw on each other for all these close games. But at the end of the day, it's always going to be, and they have Patrick Mahomes.
I mean, it's hard to understate that. And then there's another wild card to this, and that is the kicking game. How reasonable is it to bring that up, given how reliable Harrison Butker has been in many postseason and championship runs and this year, and the fact that while Jake Elliott, he's been reliable for Philly in the past, this year he's been much more shaky.
Yeah, and I think if we want to look back at the Super Bowl 2 years ago, or again, just looking at the Chiefs, trend of these close games, I think that's really important. And I think that's what makes this game, this Super Bowl even more fun. We've gone into the last 2 really going, how do you stop the Chiefs? And it's just this runaway locomotive, but there's some flaws here. There's some holes here. And so we don't know. And so I think there's some fun to that, but man, it's hard to pick against the Chiefs right now. And after talking to a lot of these guys this week, what I would tell you is it doesn't feel any differently than talking to them week 4. They've been here. They know the drill. They know how to prep. Like their Super Bowl preparation is second to none. And in doing this 3 straight times, and there's such a coolness about them. So it's really hard to go against that when this team is so prepared for these moments.
That's amazing. And we've seen it so often that it's almost become normalcy, even though what the Chiefs are doing is anything but. Similarly, but on a different level, the work that Laura Oakman's doing, it's anything but ordinary. It's fantastic. Galvanize Life is the Twitter profile for her work with Galvanize. And of course, you hear her regularly, including this Sunday on VTR and Sports broadcast of Super Bowl 59. Laura, we appreciate your time today in the Fast Lane. Thank you for carving some out in the middle of your busy schedule down there in New Orleans. We appreciate it. Congratulations on the success and work you've already put in, and we look forward to hearing it come to fruition on Sunday.
Always appreciate you having me, Ed. Thank you so much. And please tell Amy Trask I said hello. I have not seen her. I think she's at a beach somewhere, and I'm missing her at the Super Bowl. Please tell her I said hi, and thank you so much for your support with Galvanize and on this day. As much as I say that we don't celebrate it here, we need our allies to celebrate the day and keep celebrating women in sports. So thank you for having me.
We are grateful, and thank you very much for the kind words as well, Laura. Be well, and we'll hear you Sunday.
Appreciate you. Have a great day.
Laura Oakman with us here in the Fast Lane. We'll pivot from that to pivoting in basketball with Debbie Antonelli, ACC Network and ESPN analyst here in the Fast Lane. Personal credit history and background. Everybody's in a different spot. At Feller Chevrolet, they understand that. It's why Greg Walker spoke with us and shared how Feller Chevrolet can work with you.
Well, we have multiple lenders, so everybody's different in personality and in their credit equity of what they put into a vehicle. So the different lenders have different areas that they like to go after, and we know which ones to use for the different individuals to get them the the best payments possible terms that they need. As far as interest rates, everybody is saying, oh my goodness, they're getting so high. But if you look historically, we're really right in a rate area that traditionally for housing and cars is very competitive. We've just been so spoiled.
At Feller Chevrolet, they work with people from diverse credit backgrounds to get the right car for their needs. Stop by and see them, Main Street in Alta Vista, and visit fellersdirect.com.
Sandstone architecture, melodic music, wonders of the world. They're staples of Egyptian and Mediterranean culture. But you don't have to travel thousands of miles to experience it. Just drive to downtown Cairo. Located in the Grays Mill Center in Forest, downtown Cairo brings you food from the entire Mediterranean, blended with the best Egyptian recipes. This means fresh ingredients cooked on a charcoal grill, staples like $5 heroes, and build your own Mediterranean bowl. Experience the taste of Egyptian and Mediterranean world in your own backyard. Downtown Cairo, Grays Mill Shopping Center in Forest.
When shopping for auto liability insurance, it's wise to consider the best policy, not the cheapest. Hi, I'm Randy Trost with Trost Law. It's crucial to have more than the minimum insurance on your auto liability policy. This protects you if you injure someone or if someone without proper insurance hurts you. Having the right policy ensures you have sufficient underinsured coverage to take care of you and your family. To learn more how we can help you navigate these challenges, visit us at trostlaw.com. That's trostlaw.com.
Step into the Fast Lane 24/7 at Trey Lyle VT and Fast Lane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Now, back to the Fast Lane.
So I know we're asking the same question of our guest today in the Fast Lane, but it's because, look, I'm a guy, Trey's a guy. We only have so much perspective on National Girls and Women in Sports Day, but we are trying to recognize the work of women. We do that regularly in the Fast Lane and have regularly had all of our guests for today. Already spoke with Laura Oakman. We'll speak with Amy Trask in a moment, both of them talking Super Bowl 59. But someone else with whom we speak regularly because she can talk women's basketball and men's basketball in the ACC, Debbie Antonelli with us once again in the Fast Lane. Debbie, we'll start today because it's National Girls and Women in Sports Day with the blanket question that we're asking, but, we're guys. We don't really know how to properly quantify it. We're just trying to raise awareness for what this day means and the fact that it's worth including the great perspective that so many women bring to the world of sports as analysts, broadcasters, managers, coaches, players, and everything in between. But what does this day mean to you as someone in sports?
First of all, Ed, thank you for having me on your show. And I will tell you what this means to me is that I don't remember any years prior anyone having me on their show, and this is the second one today, to celebrate Girls and Women in Sports Day. All the prior years that we've had this day, it's never really been as recognized as it is today. So right now, let me just tell you how thrilled I am that you and others are paying attention to why it's important to celebrate women getting an opportunity to play.
I'm a guy, so I can only provide so much perspective, but, it's a cool thing. My wife coaches field hockey. Her daughter played field hockey. We've got 2 exchange students and they play sports and they're both girls in our house. My wife and I have 2 boys that are 6 years old ourselves, but we value the role of sports and the role it can play in shaping and molding girls to become great women. How much have you seen that play a role firsthand with yourself, but with so many others that you've been fortunate enough to cover for ESPN and the ACC network?
My whole career has been generated around trying to provide opportunity for other women to do what they want to do. And sport has been an incredible vehicle through the decades for me to be able to help me understand why team is important, why sport is important. We think about sport, we think about being athletic, we think about total well-being. When I think about team, I think about being included, learning to play different roles, learning how to succeed, learning how to fail, learning how to try again, figuring out a plan, putting a game plan together and trying to be the best that you can be. That's what sport has allowed me to do, and I see that happening more across the country. And to celebrate this particular day with the growing landscape of girls and women in sport is really cool.
It's a real cool thing. And even more neat is, we talk women's tennis often in the fast lane. We talk women's basketball. We play women's basketball and softball. We'll start broadcasting Virginia Tech Lady Hokies basketball this coming weekend, which is a new thing that we're unfolding here. And we'll be doing that around our men's basketball coverage as well through March Madness. Just from your perspective, did you ever imagine that, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, maybe even 5 years ago, that the role, the discussion, and the focus on women's sports would evolve to where it is today?
There's a lot of people that have paved a path and set down some fundamental bricks to allow this game and our game and all of women's sports to continue to grow. So there are a lot of pioneers way ahead of me. I have always been afforded the opportunity to play. I never remember those days and those stories. I do know about people that couldn't play, or their high school didn't have a team for girls. Now you would never hear of such a thing. The opportunity to play, to compete, to be the best that you can be through sport is so important and so impactful for young women. There's been a lot of great talent in a lot of different sports. But when you start talking about separators, or what I call the ultimate disruptor, Caitlin Clark has changed the media landscape and the way the games are consumed. Now, I'm going to speak specifically to basketball because that's my sport. But we've never had anybody, and I call it affectionately Clarkonomics, because what she has done is changed the lens through which we see and perceive and consume. And that's really important, because now you've got more young girls looking up to role models like Caitlin and other women that play sport, and helping them understand that if you work hard enough, maybe you could do something like Caitlin one day. I think that lens is so important, and I'm so glad that we're experiencing it, and I'm glad towards the end of my career, I'm getting a chance to celebrate it with us.
Debbie Antonelli with us in the fast lane. You hear on Westwood One. We carry many of their NCAA tournament games, as well as ACC Network and ESPN, where you'll see her and her insight. Debbie, shifting over to the games themselves in women's basketball, we'll start with the Virginia Lady Cavaliers. How big was that win at Syracuse this past weekend?
Yeah.
Just finding a way. They've been in a lot of these close 1-2 possession games. Seemingly, have only gotten a couple of those over the hump at Virginia Tech, ironically, a few weeks ago. How big was that to just get that monkey off their back at Syracuse?
Well, that's huge, because, Coach Mox is still in the early infancy of what she's looking to build. And so she's got a big vision. She got a big heart. She knows what it takes. She's won and taken teams to the NCAA tournament before. I don't know if this Virginia team will be a team in the discussion right now, but this is one of the bright futures for the ACC is Virginia. Virginia has an incredible historical background. Debbie Ryan took them to 3 Final Fours. They have a legacy to build on. They've got an empowered fan base, an empowered alumni base that loves their team. And, of course, they've got a transformational gift from Alex O'Hannon that we don't know how much or for how long he's made his gift, but we hear transformational, and we don't know exactly what that means, but that's got to be something good.
It is, and it's something that Virginia can build upon well beyond this year. To the team that they will be playing Sunday, 11:30 a.m. airtime, VTR and Sports app, leading into our coverage of Super Bowl 59. Big day for sports here Sunday on VTR and Sports, as many days are. The Virginia Tech Lady Hokies. We made this comment a couple days ago, and you can pick this apart or say where we're right or wrong. The Notre Dame game kind of gave Virginia Tech a gauge of where they are last Thursday, which is they came out with a good game plan. They hung in there early, but they don't have the same horses and talent that the Irish have to make adjustments. But they fought through that game, and the bounce back against SMU shows that Megan Duffy's team still has a really good identity in her first year.
I watched Megan Duffy's team in November in the Ally tip-off in Charlotte, and I thought, they're got a long ways to go. This doesn't look like a tournament team to me. And then I've watched them improve, and I've watched them grow. And Megan's fantastic, right? Megan knows what it takes to win. She's been a winner as a player. She's won as a coach. She's got some pieces that she can build around as well. This is a great rivalry game, always has been. Elizabeth Kitley helped cement that with she and Georgia Amore and their success. And we love a rivalry. We love a good in-state rivalry, and this should be a good one. I think there won't be much separation in this one, because I don't think either one of them can separate from the other based on the talent that they have, particularly in the backcourt.
Should make for a fun game when our listeners get to hear that on Sunday, 11:30 airtime for Virginia Tech at UVA. The road team, Hokies fans would like it if the road team wins both of them, since Virginia won on the road a couple of weeks ago at Castle Coliseum down in Blacksburg. The other team we mentioned in that discussion, though, the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, you get the impression they're kind of lurking in the weeds as a team that could compete for a spot in the Final Four in the national title with all the pieces, but maybe not all the fanfare.
You know what, Ed? I am going to be living in South Bend. I think I have them 6 or 7 times in the month of February. I'm going to get to spend a lot of time watching this team. I think this team is, I think they're really good. I think Hannah Hidalgo is a National Player of the Year candidate, along with Lauren Betts, who is the 6'7" center at UCLA, the only undefeated team remaining in the women's side. This is going to be a fun month for them, because I think they're getting healthy, getting Maddie Westfeld back in the mix. We'll see about Leah King. She took a good shot to the nose on Sunday, and again, the Louisville game. I'm looking forward to watching them continue to evolve. I do think they have another level on the defensive end that they can get to, not counting Hannah Hidalgo. She's one of the best defensive players in the country, but they got other places on the floor that I think teams could expose on the defensive end. So we'll see. Offensively, they're really hard to stop. You got to be able to score with them, and you got to be able to win the situational offense, the 50-50 balls, and stay with them on the glass.
Debbie Antonelli, ACC Network and Westwood One basketball analyst. Pivoting over to the men's side with you, Debbie, and that is the Virginia Tech Hokies with Mike Young. How impressed have you been with the job that he's done, given the youth in the backcourt, a lot of moving parts, and yet the fact that they seem to be they're not winning all their games, but they're really fighting hard?
So here's what I always say about Mike Young, because I think it's an incredible milestone that he accomplished 400 career wins. He's had a long, successful career, and all you have to do is talk to any of his players that stayed with him for 4 years, and you find out what kind of man he is. He uses basketball as his platform to teach life skills that come after you leave, and that doesn't get talked about enough. In college athletics, we're so caught up in pay for play and free agency and no salary cap, and that's all true. That's where we are right now in college athletics. But it doesn't take away the teacher, the grounded disciplinarian that he is in terms of education and why it's important around his basketball program. So let me just say that about him, because the character goes without saying. And then putting pieces on the floor to be able to succeed. He doesn't just teach you plays, he teaches you concepts, and he teaches you how to be a better player. And he expects you to play hard and play unselfishly. And when you have that combination, and he has that with his players, then you set yourself up for a chance to win.
Debbie, we'll wrap it up. Got about 60 seconds on the last one, and that is Virginia. How big was that win at Pitt to show that they're at least fighting for Ron Sanchez, even though it was not a great hand he was dealt?
It's a huge win, because Pitt was, on the bubble and in the conversation for the NCAA tournament. And that Pitt had to come with an NCAA tournament effort. I had Pitt on Saturday at Wake Forest, and it was a 1-possession game, and Wake Forest made plays late and was able to pull away. It's a huge win for Ron Sanchez. And to your point, Ed, you're absolutely right. Those kids are playing hard and doing the best they can. They are missing a few things that they would need to compete in the ACC at the highest level, but that's all fixable. And I think Ron Sanchez has done an incredible job based on the hand he's been dealt.
The long-term outlook for those programs, we can discuss at another time, but we've had a great chance to get at least an overview of ACC basketball and, of course, the impact of today, National Girls and Women's in Sports Day, with Debbie Antonelli here in the Fast Lane. Debbie, we appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Keep up the great work, and wishing you safety in travels, and hopefully you're getting a good Airbnb rate up in South Bend.
Thank you so much, Ed. I always appreciate you having me on.
Indeed. Debbie Antonelli hanging out with us today in the Fast Lane. And, that's amazing that she even mentioned that, we're not even the first interview today on that. So it shows, shows that other people are recognizing today. Look, we still try to keep it sports focused within the context of it, but it's a one-off unique day. And that's where we get to discuss something like this, including with Amy Trask, former Raider CEO, next here in the Fast Lane.
Everyone wants to save money on their next car purchase, right? Well, listen up, because I have a way for you to save thousands. Right now, Volkswagen is offering 0% for up to 60 months on a new VW Tiguan with approved credit. Do you realize when you compare a 6.9% rate on $30,000, it can save you $5,730? Now, that's an opportunity you don't want to miss. Come by Terry Volkswagen today, before this deal is gone, and take a spin in this amazing SUV. Terry Volkswagen. You'll love our cars.
We're here with Colt from We Fix Stupid Computers. Colt, to go along with your residential or individual walk-in services that you offer, you also do a lot of business IT support. How about you discuss that, and what specifically do you do to help businesses in the area?
We see a lot of that. Small to medium-sized businesses, they still have their IT projects. They still need resources to help them within their office and for remote users. And so we'll step in and fill in the gap where we do a lot of projects for them, help them manage their resources, their budgets, and get their technology under control.
Colt, how can these people reach out to you to assess their IT needs?
Call us. Our number is 434-525-8590. Our website, wefixstupidcomputers.com. We're on Facebook. And our office is here locally, 14690 Forest Road, right next to Scott's Cabinet on 221.
Your home is more than just walls and windows. It's where life happens. And at Right Choice Construction, we get that. We're not just builders. We're fathers, mothers, neighbors, just like you. And every nail and every beam reflects our commitment to creating a place you're proud to live in. With Right Choice Construction, you're choosing a team that's been perfecting the art of building for years. So build with us, build with experience, build with quality, build with Right Choice. Step into the fast lane 24/7 at Trey Lyle VT and Fast Lane Ed Lane on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Now, back to the fast lane.
Many of you know her because she's been in the fast lane plenty of times, and you know her as well from filling in her appearances on the Rich Eisen Show, weekdays noon to 3 p.m., VTRN Sports app, and VTRN Sports, of course, being your home for Super Bowl 59, 2 p.m. this coming Sunday, or whenever the Virginia Tech UVA women's basketball game wraps up. And yes, we carry women's basketball as well in the fast lane, or not in the fast lane, but on the Virginia Talk Radio Network. And we mentioned that today because today is National Girls and Women's in Sports Day, which is why we're sticking with our theme today here in the fast lane. Female guests bringing their great insight all across the world of sports. And the latest to do that is the aforementioned Amy Trask, who is generous enough to join us in the fast lane, but apparently not in the fast lane because you're pulled over on the side of the road.
Correct. I am not in the fast lane. I am in the parking lane. I'd like to note that I am legally parked, although I have not gotten out of my car to put money in the meter because it's raining.
Hey, that's a viable reason, right? And, if somebody tries to accost you, you can just, put it back in drive and say you were in neutral the whole time.
There you go. That's a good idea.
Indeed. First of all, it's National Girls and Women's in Sports Day. What does that mean to you?
Well, I may come across a bit cranky when I say this. So let me preface it by saying I always understand the designation of one day for anything. First of all, I love that you're having me on today. I love that you are focused on women today. But it's like when people say to me, Amy, it's National Ice Cream Day today. Well, look, every day is ice cream day. We don't need one day for ice cream day. And every day should be sports day for kids, girls, boys, adults. Every day should be sports day when people can enjoy sports. But I do appreciate you having me on today.
Well, it is, of course, wonderful. And there's other reasons as well. And this is why it's awesome is you have qualifications. You're the former CEO of the Raiders. You're an analyst for CBS Sports. You co-host What the Football. And your latest one is with Brent Musburger, who is one of the co-founders of VSiN. And we carry some of their programming as well here on VTRN Sports, the VSiN By the Book show from 8 to 10 a.m. weekdays here on VTRN Sports. It was interesting hearing your discussion and how open things are, and then Brent kind of joking about how it's so different now versus back in the day when it was kind of done hush-hush, especially if it was outside the Las Vegas area. How different is your coverage and incorporating the thought of sports betting been into your perception as you've seen this evolve, especially over the last 6-7 years.
Oh boy, it sure has evolved, and it was just a lot of fun, and we appreciated Brent joining us on What the Football. Susie and I enjoyed that conversation, and Brent actually took his time to help teach me math. I have never been a gambler because I just can't do the gambling math, but when I do bet, I bet ice cream. Now, all of that said, there's just been a tremendous evolution. When I was in the NFL, part of the NFL, and this was years ago, we were the first team to put fantasy football on our team website, Raiders.com. And it wasn't a gambling post. You couldn't gamble through Raiders.com, but it posted all the information about players that people could use if they participated in fantasy football. Well, we launched that. As I mentioned, we were the first team to do so. And within less than 5 minutes of us launching that on Raiders.com, my phone rang. It was an executive from the league office, and he said 4 words, Amy, take it down. And we had to take it down. So that just shows you how far things have come in the years since then.
It's amazing because, back in the day, it was just forbidden and nobody wanted to do anything. Last year, we had a Super Bowl in Las Vegas. This year, we're having it I won't mention their name because, like you with What the Football, I don't mention the name of people who don't sponsor the Fast Lane or the Virginia Talk Radio Network. But that Superdome down in New Orleans happens to have a sports book tagged as its name. And, the flair around sports betting has never been more prominent.
Well, tremendous respect for you doing as I do. If someone is not paying you, if a business is not paying you to sponsor you, why the heck would you mention their name on air? So tremendous respect for you doing that. And you're right. Look, during my years in the league, it was hard to fathom there would ever be a Super Bowl in Las Vegas, that there'd be a stadium named after a casino. But we're in a different day and age now. And look, as Brent Musburger pointed out, it's not that there wasn't always gambling. It was simply under the table, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because it's gone from that to everybody does it. It's just part of regular conversation. And, there's different content about it. What the Football, as Brent Musburger, who was one of the initial sports betting type people and co-founder of VSiN, Vegas Stats and Information Network. We carry some of their program like VSiN by the books, weekdays 8 to 10 a.m. on VTR and Sports, so in the VTR and Sports app. So it's just amazing how the dichotomy of it has shifted around the game. That being said, most people have said that the sports betting line with the Chiefs at about a 1 to a 1.5 point favored against Philadelphia seems about right. Philadelphia, they may have the more talented roster top to bottom, but coaching, quarterback play, and I'll even go the third dimension, especially if you're talking about a close game, the kicking game all seem to heavily favor Kansas City.
Well, it's a tremendous matchup. And as you noted, these are both very, very good teams, 2 very good quarterbacks. Although Patrick is in a class of his own, I think Andy Reid is the best coach there is right now. Certainly if, I'm going to argue with myself as to best. Just right now, I would say with what Andy has done this year, with the roster and the injuries and the sort of holes in the roster that he has, and the fact that having just won the Super Bowl, every team has the Chiefs in their target, I think Andy Reid has a strong argument for the best coach of the year. Philadelphia, dominating offensive line. We see what Saquon has been doing all season. One thing I think Kansas City, or one of the things Kansas City has going for it, is Spags, their defensive coordinator. He is just spectacular.
How about this other angle? People, the D-word dynasty, it's there. They've won 3 championships. Every year Patrick Mahomes has started, he has at least made the conference championship game, and over half of those he's made the Super Bowl. And over those Super Bowls, he's mentioned even if they lose to Philly, he will have won at least half of them coming out of Sunday. How much, though, is the underrated part to this dynasty? The fact that, much like New England in their heyday, when you have the right coach and a dominant quarterback and one of the best of all time, the real sign of being a good franchise is, can you cater your game plan to different stratospheres and eras where you are, which right now is much more of a defense focus for the Chiefs?
Well, you're absolutely right. You have to be able to tailor your plans on offense and defense around the talent you have. I always say of the best coaches, they best position their players to be their best. They don't force players into a system which doesn't best suit those players. They build a system which magnifies the assets and best positions the players to be their best. Andy does that. Spags does that. And I don't want to in any way not note that Philadelphia is doing a good job of that this year. I think it's going to be a spectacular game. Two terrific teams, and there's some interesting matchups. I am very, very interested and just can't wait to see, and my focus will be on how Kansas City's defense tries to neutralize Philadelphia's offense.
When you mention neutralize the Philadelphia offense, how much of that starts with Saquon Barkley? How much of that starts with what may be one of the more underrated elements, and that is a Philadelphia offensive line that generally they're very good. They've been great in run blocking, but over lately they've kind of shown some potential holes in pass defense and blitz pickup in particular that, Steve Spagnuolo, who likes to get creative from that Jim Johnson tree, might try to exploit.
Well, I'll answer that in two ways. I think Saquon not only would be, but he already has been one who has credited the offensive line with a tremendous amount of his success this year. And Saquon is just a quintessential team player. I remember earlier in the season when he was asked if he wanted to go back in the game to, achieve another record. He said, no, let's let some of the other players go in. And the reason I note that is he really is a team player, and he is very, very quick to note how good that offensive line is. And he's been very clear. He knows he couldn't have rushed with the Giants this season in the manner he is rushing with the Eagles. Now, that said, I do recognize what you've said about some of the issues with respect to the offensive line. But just as Spags is going to be trying to exploit that, Philadelphia has been working undoubtedly to try to shore that up. I believe that most games are won and lost at the line of scrimmage, so let's keep our eyes there.
It is one of the coolest areas. The other is, people don't often talk about guard defensive tackle matchups, but Trey Smith against Jalen Carter, one guy, one of the best defensive linemen already in the NFL in his second year, at least he's shown that ability, is Jalen Carter. The other is Trey Smith, who's in line for a big payday at the end of this season when he gets free agency in whatever form or fashion. How much are you going to be eyeing that yourself, Amy?
Well, I am going to be eyeing it a lot. Look, Al Davis said to me innumerable times throughout my career the following two things. The quarterback must go down, and he must go down hard. So let's watch the pass rush on both teams. And he also said to me, kid, never leave a team without corners. So, and then the third thing, and I will note this, it's not something he shared with me. It's something I share all the time, but it's a given. And of course, this was part of our discussions. He just didn't have a unique saying that went with it. The better the pass rush, the easier the job is for the defensive backs, because the more pressure the quarterback is under, the easier the job is for your corners. So my eyes are on pass rush. My eyes are on cornerbacks.
Amy Trask hanging out with us in the Fast Lane. It is National Girls and Women's in Sports Day. We're mentioning that, but not making it the subject because we want to highlight what people like Amy have in terms of their credentials and expertise, and she has many. Former CEO of the Raiders, now an analyst for CBS Sports and co-host of What the Football, and worth a follow at Amy Trask as well on Twitter or X or whatever people like to call it this day and age. We don't care. It's all kind of the same to us here in the Fast Lane, but Amy is not in the Fast Lane. She's pulled over on the side of the road just for us today. Matchup, you mentioned expecting the game to be a very good one in Super Bowl 59, 2 p.m. airtime, VTR and Sports app and VTR and Sports this Sunday. How much do you anticipate, if it's a close game, that, I've taken this stance, a lot of people seem to, and people may call it lazy, but I don't see how it's lazy given the success of the Chiefs, that coach, quarterback, and I'll go kicker as well, the combination, all of that goes in Kansas City's favor, and it's hard to bet against Mahomes and Reed, but it's hard to bet against them for a reason.
Well, you're absolutely right. And I would simply throw into that which you said, add the defensive coordinator for the Chiefs. Because, yes, Andy Reid is tremendous. I agree with everything you said, but I think they have the best defensive coordinator in the National Football League.
What about the other key element that we mentioned in that trifecta, and that is special teams? Harrison Butker has been extremely reliable as a kicker from any distance and in any situation. Jake Elliott was that way until this year, at which point he's been very shaky, including the playoffs. How much does that factor into the game plan already for Philadelphia?
It's a big deal, and I love that you mentioned it. There's not enough focus, in my view, on special teams. Look, there's three parts to the game. You've got your offense, you've got your defense, and you've got your special teams. And I don't recall the numbers right now, and I'm going to plead, Your Honor, in my defense, I'm not remembering the numbers because I am parked on the side of a busy road. But the fact is, if you look at the numbers from this past season at how many games were decided by 3 points or fewer than 3 points, fewer than a touchdown, a lot of games come down to a kick or an extra point, or a missed kick, or a missed extra point. We don't know if that will be the case this coming weekend, but it certainly was the case a lot this year in the league. I think special teams are very important, and your notes about the kickers are wise.
Well, and what does that also say about the potential that we may get more tush pushes, not just on those 4th and 1 situations for Philly, but maybe even if you're in a spot where kicking has been shaky, that they may look to go for it in a spot or two, especially if there's one of those awkward defensive penalties after a touchdown, which allows Philadelphia that opportunity?
Well, it's going to depend on, A, where the ball is, because it's a risk-reward analysis. If you are risking that if you do not convert, you're giving the ball to the other team. Where are you giving that ball to the other team? So there's a risk-reward analysis in that. Where's the ball? What is the time frame? Who's ahead? There's just a lot of factors that go into those decisions.
Amy, we'd be remiss if we didn't ask. I don't think there's a whole lot of pressure, even though there's a three-peat for Kansas City. You can certainly disagree, and your qualifications are much greater than ours here in the fast lane. But for Philly, as talented as their roster is, San Francisco will get healthy next year. The Rams, I expect a bounce back from them as they get more draft picks after saying things we can't say about draft picks, at least in the fast lane. And then the team in our backyard that Philly, it was a wider margin than it looked like it was for a chunk of that game in the NFC Championship. But the Washington Commanders now with Jaden Daniels having completely flipped the fortunes of that franchise.
Well, I'm not ready to look at next season until we at least get through the Super Bowl, because there'll be free agency, there'll be trades, there will be the draft. We don't know yet how these teams will be composed for next season. But I will note, as to what you said as to the Commanders, wow, or as my mom would say, when a simple wow wasn't enough, wowee. What a terrific, terrific turnaround we're seeing with that team. And that draft pick of a quarterback, he is something special. And look, we all watched him play. And yes, he is a tremendous, tremendous player. But there's also something, and I'll talk French now for a minute. There is a je ne sais quoi about him that just struck me all season long. And the analogy I used on CBS Sports on the show that you referenced was, he looks to me like the person, if I'm in a military aircraft, an F-15, an F-16, and by the way, I have flown in one. And if you're going 500 miles an hour, which I was, and if there's a problem with the plane, and there wasn't when I was in it, but he's the person I want in that pilot seat. He's the person, when you've got to have calm, cool, collected decision-making and leadership, you want him there. He's really special.
The cultured Cal Bear, Amy Trask, with us in the fast lane. Someone who has experience going in the triple digits of speed, but not in the fast lane on the highway or with us, just in fighter planes. And you don't have to admit whether the driving part is true or not. We'll keep that hush hush today in the fast lane. But we'll wrap it up on this point. And I can't help but think about the conversation you had maybe a week or two ago in What the Football about about your experiences with Dan Snyder at league meetings, and how that plays into the perception of how Jaden Daniels and Dan Quinn, even though they didn't make the Super Bowl this year, have flipped the perception of the Washington Commanders amongst the NFL and certainly in our backyard as well.
They certainly have, but it goes beyond that. It goes to ownership. It goes to leadership. I say this about National Football League teams. It's true about almost every business. Ultimate authority and ultimate responsibility rests with the controlling owner. And sure, that responsibility and that authority can be delegated, but it can always be yanked back, proving that ultimate authority and ultimate responsibility rests with ownership. And Commander fans should feel so good about the change in ownership. And because I'm in Los Angeles, and although he's not the controlling owner, I'm going to give Magic a shout out.
Yes, indeed. Well, we'll wrap it up on this, Amy, and we appreciate your time. True or false? It really happened. You were at a league meeting and you were, instructed not to look Dan Snyder in the eye?
True. It was the first league meeting that Dan attended. Just by way of background, there's different kinds of league meetings. There's the annual meeting, and that's the one where teams send multiple people and they bring spouses, and there's social occasions. And then there's the meetings that are either one per club or two per club. And that's where all the work gets done. And this was either a two per club or a one per club meeting. And it was the first one that Dan had attended after buying the team. And as we're getting ready to sit down in the room, someone walks over to me, and it was clear that he was part of Dan's group, part of his entourage. He wasn't going to be in the meeting. He was escorting Dan in, and he was going to leave the room. I guess Dan needed to be escorted to his seat. And he asked me he told me, please don't look Dan Snyder in the eye. He said that to me. Don't look him in the eye. Don't make eye contact with him. Well, the best way to get me to do something is to tell me not to do something. So he told me not to look Dan in the eye. So for the rest of the meeting, I just stared him in the eye.
Damn right you did. I know I cursed kind of in the fast lane, but I just couldn't resist at that response. That is what an all-American bad you-know-what would do. Fill in this you-know-what part with whatever an acronym you want. There's some that begin with A's, some with B's, but it's all true for Amy Trask. We hope you take that as a compliment. Back to
I do.
Yes.
I do. You tell me not to do something, I'm going to do it.
Yes, indeed. My kind of person here in the fast lane. It's why we love having Amy Trask, as well as the insight she shares as the former Raiders CEO, author of You Negotiate Like a Girl, and of course, analyst for CBS Sports and co-host of the What the Football podcast. Amy, thank you for stepping out of the fast lane on the road to step into the fast lane with us today on the VTR and Sports app. Be safe out there, and we look forward to chatting again soon if it's something you'd be open to.
Of course I would. It's always a pleasure to join you, and I appreciate that you invite me to do so.
It is our pleasure, and a great way to wrap up National Girls and Women's in Sports Day. If you missed anything, Fast Lane, Ed Lane, wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for listening to The Fast Lane on VTR and Sports, 93.3 FM, W227 BG Timberlake, and 1320 AM, WVGM Lynchburg.